here's the weird thing, okay? If we are to perceive D&D ness as, if you will, first and best role playing, right? What I call the Nicene Creed of the hobby.
Yeah.
If you are to take that, then strangely enough, you would think that simultaneously, oh, and we're told you can do whatever you want, right? You can play your character, do whatever you want, and yet you can quote do whatever you want, but you can't, right? However, the group parses alignment plus this expectation of race and class, no, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't. And so that's one thing. Another one is the notion of the myth of the sandbox, that you can go, your group can go anywhere and roam anywhere and do what they want and take sides in what they want and all the rest of it. When in practice, what you've got is basically, a whole bunch of nice little mini soft railroads to encounter in some order.
Yeah.
The most egregious example is what I like to call the dungeon with two entrances, so it's a sandbox, right? But the more typical one is based on a number of modules I can mention, in which they're often actually cited as, the ultimate sandboxes. You got the Village of Hamlet, you got the Reptile God, you got the Bone Hill, and there's a bunch of others. And yet, if you go and actually look at what's in the module, there's only one way it's coming out. There is like the climactic fight with that guy. There is, and then this happens, and then the Duke does this, and now you're going to go do, when you go off on the Duke's mission, it's set. And so one can say, oh, those are just guidelines or whatever, but really you look at it and there's nothing else to do. There's nothing else to do. There's no other, thing. And so I'm trying to state that there are some built-in contradictions. What freedom of action do we really have? What freedom of action do I have in playing my character? What freedom of action do I have in my options? With permission, I was slightly harsh on one of the players in the conversation when I asked, you're trapped in a poem. Why are you pawing at the walls looking for secret doors? And he said, well, I guess I was just right in D&D mode, and one of the things you do is check for secret doors. If you're in a box, look for the secret door, right?
Yeah.
And it's just what you do. It didn't make any sense whatsoever for the fiction, for the character, the setting, anything. In a way, if you were to look at the game sort of as fiction, his character obviously was psychotic or something, right? Obviously, just performing these weird, irrational actions. And so I found the whole thing illuminating, because I was looking across this and saying, wow, how desirable. I mean, let's say we do this D&D thing. I maintain that somebody who is successful at it, that is to say, has an ongoing game that is enjoyable and people are into and all the rest of it, has probably deviated from the paradigm in some way, or has specified it in certain ways that remove a number of confusions, or has basically, done what all the Heartbreaker people do and basically make their own game in some way. So I'm trying to get at how to articulate this. I mean, it kicks off massive defensiveness, when you talk about it, first of all. And then second, okay, let's go ahead. Let's go to your first group. And let's say you picked a game that you feel, you have a yen for, in some way. And you were to, and it would be one of these games. Let's not pick Lamentations. Let's pick one that actually is pretty close to the bone. Maybe it is a version of D&D, or maybe it's one of the versions of, old school games, so-called, that does hew quite close, to the the procedures. And in the midst of this, what is it that you would be enjoying doing with them? What's your role in this? I'm kind of curious about that.
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I think so. I think that there is a. So if I think something, I would have to be kind of specific. But if I think of it, like wanting to play like the Moldvay basic set, which is I've had a lot of fun with over the years. Mm-hmm. I think that it is a. I guess what I like to get out of it is one. I think it is. I don't want to start using like these essentialist words like unique or, but it has a kind of. There is something about those challenges and some of the on my part like being able to kind of design puzzles, to be able to mix and match all the different weird monsters and everything, and kind of play with this like huge list of like other people's ideas and kind of bring them in, and it just seems from the point of view of the dungeon master, like all this fun like creative mixing and matching you can do. And I think that I honestly think that the players would kind of enjoy it, because I see them enjoying other types of like tactical games, and they play a lot of board games, and so it seems like it would be a good fit.
Those the Holmes and Moldvay, and I think less so Menser, all have a really nice economy of activity, right? There's buying stuff, there's adventuring, there's experience points, there's leveling, there's survival, there's hit points, there's there's a nice kind of a cycle, of currency there. I very definitely see the same thing in Tunnels and Trolls. I actually think Moldvay has more in common with Tunnels and Trolls than with any other game. That's my personal thought. Including the somewhat, psychedelic and offbeat visuals and stuff like that, and I don't hesitate to use the word unique, actually. I think it is. So you take that. Torchbearer, of course, is based on, highly intensive play of Moldvay, sussing out what all the little consumable variables are, mm-hmm. and then making those, the game for Torchbearer. And so I find that, understandable. The interesting thing is, how would you keep it from being, or what would you want to avoid? I mean, how would you, I don't know about how actually, but what would you not want to have in there? Right? In other words, what's your personal massage of getting this sort of kind of ickily superficial, I'm going to be blunt, fairly superficial, sanctified, but actually kind of trivial, sense of danger, pressure, and well, I mean, you can feel danger and pressure in a good way, but not in that weird mistrustful way where you're crouching along with your hands up at shoulder level, looking around in this constant, sort of, make another perception check, or you can't touch a doorknob, that kind of thing.
That's my fear, is that we spend 2 hours and we've gone 10 paces into the room.
I've seen it. I mean, without any exaggeration whatsoever, I have seen a group do exactly that. Right. So it's not a sarcastic comment on your part. So go ahead. Again, that's part of my fear, and partly that they do this group does actually like these tactical type challenge type situations, that it would in some ways I think that like, oh, this would be fun for them, and in other ways it would lead exactly to that trap of, okay, we've got to figure this out, and them. And one of the reasons they're averse to it is I don't think that's kind of not what they feel like they want to do with the role playing. Maybe right.
They would feel that it would get in the way of what they like from role playing.
Well, whereas there's an interesting point to it. If the word challenge has always kind of annoyed me. I used it in some of my writings when I was trying to work this out about this kind of play. But the notion that characters can face tense, dangerous, and confusing circumstances, and that figuring things out is part of what we do and must do, that in and of itself can't possibly be a bad thing.
Yeah.
And so there's an element of it, or a way of thinking about it, or perhaps a way of presenting it, perhaps a way of designing a game around it that makes it basically removes the fiction from it, because the fiction can only be in service to it. So the purported flexibility of role playing is gone. The purported flexibility of what I can do is gone.
Yeah, and kind of what I see in what I've actually experienced when I've played some of these games and they've worked really well is that there's like a puzzle or there's danger, but like you're experiencing it really, like you're really experiencing the fiction really vividly. And it actually, if you're just looking at what's going on, you cannot tell the difference between us doing D&D and us doing, say, Sorcerer, because just in the sense of in both cases, we're just really engaged in the fiction and what's going on. And then it's hard for me to explain that could be the case.
Right.
Actually we can get that type of investment in the fiction with Moldvay, and have challenges and stuff, and have like kind of these.
And yet there would be the weird rune on there, which if you turn it sideways so that its parts match with the parts outside the turning part, and click it, and then that gives us the thing we need, or that opens the portal, or whatever it is, right? And designing for that has always been tricky because it's often binary. And Tunnels and Trolls was usually very guilty of this. Rocks fall, everyone dies if you don't do it.
Yeah.
But the idea is that you, what does it mean not to make it? What does it mean not to get it? What does it mean? Yeah. Is it okay to get some of these things and not others? And by okay, I don't mean, what I mean is that you actually still can have fun with what your characters did and how it turned out in some way, right?
Yeah.
What are consequences for those things? It's very... That's a question that one needs to answer in order to do what you're talking about. Yes, what happens if you don't get the puzzles? What happens if you don't, kill that guy? What happens if you don't, whatever? It's something that I struggled with a little bit in the 4th edition games, which I really tried to design more freewheeling. I don't know what the hell you guys are going to do. I've just created all of this nonsense, and who knows, which ones of these things is going to turn into the climactic moment for you, right? I have no idea. But it's not that easy to do in the context of, in the case of 4th edition, you're going to have X encounters in order to make it to the next level. So you really have to kind of free your mind from, okay, I'm going to set up these encounters and define the next level up as these encounters. You have to kind of free your mind from that. And as I learns to do, over provide the situation with multiple different things going on. And since they all had relationships to one another, whichever ones you poked in whichever way would reconfigure them all, right, in some somewhat intuitive fashion at the moment. And you end up with a crisis of, you end up with a battle of 5 armies, but I don't know which ones are allied with which, and I don't know which side you're on. So
right.
At least until we get there. And so that's kind of what I was doing, but I did find that I had to wrench my preparation out of multiple assumptions in the text that I was building encounters as their known blocks of leveling up this time.
Right. Yeah.
And so how do you, is it possible to do that? To do that with Moldvay is, I think, in some ways kind of interesting, because there's literally no way, as I recall, to get any kind of experience points except by slaying and looting.
Yeah.
So therefore, pitching all of this in terms of interesting NPCs and mysteries and stuff like that, how much of that just becomes window dressing and people are going, all right, yes, your innkeeper is fascinating.
Right.
When's he going to tell us where the entrance of the dungeon is?
Right.